Now, let's get to some takeaways here. And then we're going to get to some draft ranks where I'll praise some NFL organizations and I'll look down on many others because I think that though we always like to think of this as being one where every team's smart and good and right. I think when we look at this draft and kind of looking at it from an autopsy factor, looking at it and understand that there are still teams that aren't necessarily looking at doing it smart on the surface of things. And I know we want to give every team credit out there and go, well, everybody did solid. Everyone's a professional out there. That there's some things you can look at that you go, well, not everything is being done smartly out there. And this is where there's room for teams to take advantage like John Schneider could in the future in how these teams are running the way that they're running. Because it's not always a lot of teams that are showing a lot of, to me, super long foresight in their outlook. It sort of feels somewhat reactionary in the moment. I'll give you some examples of this. Everyone and their mother knew that the New Orleans Saints were going to take a right tackle. It's wild. You knew almost like months ahead of time. Yeah, they're going to take her. That's all they got to do. They didn't get in free agency. They're like, no, it's not a good draft approach. They got a good player. It worked out for them, but it wasn't necessarily a great draft approach. The Bills looked at him and said, hold my beer. Said, yeah, everyone also is going to know we're going to take a wide receiver with the first pick. You guys just know no matter where we're going to, it's going to be a wide receiver. Yeah, that's it. They did that. The Falcons picked for need for me when looking at their draft across the board. And they feel like they're ready and they're in the moment, but you can see in them that everything went heavy defense after they got past Penix. I don't think that's a great approach of them leaning into a value-based structure. Like, okay, we need help down on the defense, get down the D-line. We're going to need another edge guy or something. Get that guy here. There's a lot of that going on with him. Go look at Trent Baalke's draft. Trent Baalke is a general manager who just goes for these traits on players. It's more like the overall kind of trait things. And sometimes it worked in his favor back in San Francisco. Sometimes it kind of blows up in his face. But you looked at the draft again with them and you went, man, again, another one where it's a lot of just trait stuff working down here. A lot of weird, just not production stuff. You're really projecting out the build, length, size of the guy more than what they really kind of are as a player. The Washington Commanders managed to get one offensive lineman somewhat pretty deep into the draft on a team that got their quarterback sacked 65 times last season. What's your guys' over-under on Jaden Daniels making it through 5 games next year? How's he going to stand up on that one? This is the approach I talk about often with quarterbacks and the teams that don't have an outlook that's really showing any kind of foresight in what they're doing to build and develop. They're just sort of like, well, we're here. We're at the good spot. Let's take the quarterback. I'm not knocking the pick on taking Daniels, but okay, here you go. And Jaden already has got the predilection to want to run out there like a crash test dummy in the open field. And you're going to have him out there doing a lot of running, I think, right now with this offensive line. They're putting him up. You can almost say, man, maybe working your guys' best favor to give Jaden just a year, and almost not a year for his development, but for just his protection. So you don't get the guy neutralized. The Niners had some good picks in this draft, and I know a lot of people love themselves some Ricky Pearsall, but I think that one's going to come back to bite them. Versus going other directions they could have gone in this draft to better improve their team. Sean Payton looks like he's going for the Saints offensive rebuild out there in the Rocky Mountains. He got his Drew Brees. He got his big slot. He got his outside receiver that can take the top off the defense. The defense, I guess we're just going to have to see out there in Denver how that long-term plan is going to go, because it certainly looked like a little bit more erosion from what was already starting to undertake under Hackett there, if not more so with Peyton. And that's going to maybe be a big question with him as you go into the future here of this draft. So not everybody was doing it smart. Not everybody was doing it brilliantly, as might sometimes appear on the surface of it. A couple other quick takeaways I just want to bounce through here with you guys a bit. 14 straight offensive players taken in this draft. And I just have never quite seen that before in my life. I don't think we're ever going to see that again. It's going to be to a little bit of the point here of my next point that I want to bring up. That's again part of the looking at the Byron Murphy and just kind of making sure we acknowledge a little bit of this. It set the stage up so nicely for the Seahawks, and I don't think it can be undersold enough. In my lifetime and watching football for a very long period of time, which I'm not going to tell you how long anymore, Because I'm at that embarrassing point of age where I'm like, well, me telling you is really going to date me. But I've never seen it before in my life. And I understand we're in an offensive age. And I understand it's all about offense. And I understand that they just got rid of another tackle this last offseason to help out the offense. But let's also remember this was the last year here where defense for the first time took a little bit of the rope back in the constant tug-of-war battle that goes on between the offense and the defense. They got a little bit back this offseason for the first time in forever. And you got the best one maybe, but 14 offensive players. To me, again, we talk about smart or not smart. This doesn't necessarily broach into pure intelligence to me that 14 teams are starting off. Was it really that the best? And I had loved the grades on the offensive side. Don't get me wrong. I had it kind of built away in a lot of ways, but not to this degree necessarily. This was a draft where the 14 best players were all on the offensive side of the ball to start things off. Hard to see, huh? Hard to see. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. I'm not going to belabor this one. I just wanted to bring it up because I ask, who could have saw it? Who could have seen 6 quarterbacks taken? Well, of course, yours truly here sat for months begging my people to believe me that indeed 6 quarterbacks were going to be taken. The lesson to be learned from this is that quarterbacks are being valued as much as ever. But if there's good ones in the draft, you got to go up and get them. John's eventually going to want to get his if this team becomes a team or gets over the mark out of that region of being up in the top of the draft in this first year under McDonald, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever their wins they might be at. It's going to take the cost to come up and move and go get that quarterback. It's not getting cheaper here. They're not getting less value. The rookie deal and having that access to that 5-year rookie deal is a very powerful one for NFL teams, and it's only drawing them further there. If you have a draft that's completely empty of talent, devoid of really good throwers, like we had a couple years ago in that Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Pickett draft, that will definitely, teams will look at in that right light as well. But those are rare drafts. You're usually going to get at least a couple of guys in them. You're going to have to go get them if you need. But this is also a lesson to the reason I was predicting for months that 6 guys were going to go in the top of the draft is that the talent was there on these guys. I didn't think so actually with McCarthy. I wouldn't have done it with that one, but that was one there was enough people forecasting that. You could see that thing coming from, 50 miles out without binoculars. But all the other ones, you could see why. Penix and Nix, you might not like them individually, but from NFL standpoint, having guys like that have had multiple years of great production, long college careers, lots of time starting, that's not pushing them away. There may be some attributes of them that push them away. This guy doesn't process. This guy's got some injury stuff. This guy's a little older. Yeah, those are going to be minor deterrents when it comes down to all of that as a baseline, which when you look at historically speaking with really good quarterback prospects, it's kind of a rare thing when you get that much productivity out of the guys or that many starts out of a guy. That's something that I think average fans don't maybe weigh in as much to, but NFL teams really were drawn to. It's why I predicted for months on this one there were 6 QBs taken, and why, again, it's not getting any cheaper. This is going to go to a little bit of the point in regards to the Seahawks, and this is one that's just a specific point to them, but I think that one no one's really talking about as much as they should. They got the best defensive player in the draft. When you heard the Indianapolis Colts general manager on his live reaction to them picking Latu, who's a fine player, he's laughing and he's smiling and he's happy. Is he saying, we got the best defensive player in the draft? Or is he saying, we got the best pass rusher in the draft? 2 different things, aren't they? And in the moment, he's not thinking about what he's saying. He's just elated that he's got this guy, his edge rushing pick of the litter, but telling that he wasn't able to kind of say that in the moment. If you were able to pick the first defensive player, and of course the Colts were picking right above us before Byron Murphy, if you're able to pick the best defensive player in the draft, that's what you would have said, right? We just got the GD best defensive player in the draft. We got the best rusher in the draft. We just got the best pass rusher in the draft. To me, there's a little bit of a difference in there. There was a little bit of like a subconscious tell there in the Colts general manager saying it in the way that he said it there. And it doesn't just go to his little psychological tell here. It also speaks to, if I was to take a poll of NFL teams out there across the board, 32 down the line, and I'd say, which of these 2 would you have rather have? I don't think that Latu wins out between these 2 choices of Byron Murphy or Latu. I think that in a very strong probability here, Byron Murphy becomes the best defensive player you're able to pull from this draft from a NFL general manager consensus standpoint, right? Not all of them, but from if they were that same position and there's those two players sitting there looking at them, A, B, which do you take, general manager? Don't. Murphy. I bet you Latu might be grabbed a handful of times. So something to put in perspective here. There were teams beating down the Seattle Seahawks door to come and trade up for Byron Murphy. General manager John Schneider, for the first time in his life, it probably took years off of his life. It probably grayed his chest hair that he had to give up the draft capital so not to trade back, because I'm sure his scouts at that point were saying, just take him. So where I've come to with Murphy is that I didn't change my opinion on the outlook on the film necessarily with him. I'm certainly warming up to him much more now as you get a chance to do the super deep dive of investigation on him a little bit. But it's the opinion you sense from General Manager John Schneider in this, in them standing pat like this, knowing John's predilection to want to move back and flip back and turn it over. He does not want to stand pat. Remember that. And he's told us that in actions so many times over. Give me more picks, give me more swings, give me more bites at the apple. That is the draw for John. So for him to stand pat, for him to take this player, for him to turn down those offers, for him to make sure that he did not allow Byron Murphy to get into the grasp of the Rams, who we know now were desperately seeking Byron Murphy, this becomes a phenomenal pick and a great feather in the cap of the Seahawks for this draft. Receivers still rule the roost. No doubt about this one. No surprise to any of you guys on this one. It was still wild to watch how many got taken up at the top of this draft, how valued they truly are here at this point in the outlook of things. You have 7 taken in the first round, 10 wide receivers taken in the first 35 picks, 35 overall, 16 through the first 3 rounds. This was definitely a wide receiver stock draft. That was where the strength of it was, and teams did not lean away from that. So, yes, you can theoretically, and this is a little bit of why I want to bring this up, because of the, obviously the DK stuff that gets talked about a lot in my chat, and these rumors that just will never sometimes die. Just die. I don't want to hear about this anymore. I'm done with this with DK. But the thinking here that you just sort of flip this over and go get that, if you ever want to, this is why I say, ride with DK. Because number one, we can just go get one back in the draft. Well, you're going to have to give up maximum draft capital to go get that guy. The thinking you're going to sit along there in the 4th, 5th, 6th round on these given drafts and just kind of hidey-ho your way to go get a guy that's going to insta-replace a guy like this. No, it's not. And no, there's not. You got to give the price to come up move these guys. 35 overall taken. You can take a lot in numbers, but the truly good ones, 7 in the first round. Starting to darn near drop to the point where it's 1/3 of the first round picks. If you've got a good one, if you have a great one moving into his prime, don't let that go. Especially if you know you're not going to get the return back for what you're giving up. Cornerbacks are as vital, it would seem, just about here as wide receivers. If we were to take this away as well, for though you had 16 wide receivers taken in those first 3 rounds, you had 13 cornerbacks taken through the first 3 rounds as well. So we walked in the draft thinking that the wide receiver corners were the 2 strengths of the position. Certainly it bore out in that in the bottom line of who was taken and who was selected. But cornerbacks are still being held in very high value here at this point. And again, maybe explains a little bit back why, as to our Seahawks double backed around to 2 of them later on this draft, why John has drafted so many of them in recent drafts, is that you need the guys on the outside that can stand up with these very fast, very explosive, very athletic, very twitchy wide receivers on the outside. And the Seahawks, certainly in the athletic profiles of both James and Nehemiah Pritchett, we're looking at least did find in that. Guys that should be able to stay in the back pocket of anybody and run with anybody, and you're not going to see them just be a matter of, well, he just doesn't have the get up and go to stay with that guy there. You're not going to say about these 2 guys. And certainly understandable here as the cornerbacks continue to loom as well. They're right there step for step value wise with the wide receivers. Running backs can't get no love. No. Oh, them poor running backs. Them poor running backs. Them poor souls. 4 running backs taken in the first 3 rounds. It's tough. That's down from 7 through the first 3 rounds last year. The previous year to that, there was 6 running backs taken through the first 3 rounds. So either we're not getting high elite running back talent entering this stage here, and I would offer this as a year in the draft where you could say, yeah, there wasn't a high elite guy. There wasn't a Bijan Robinson. Because, when there was a Bijan Robinson last year, he was a top 10 pick. So the NFL still does seem to be afforded an ability to see those guys that are special talents, and maybe perhaps that there's just few of them coming through. So make of that what you will with it. I don't know if this is going to be an immediate trend moving into the future here with the position. You saw a lot of young guys coming out of this draft who could have come back next year, another year at the running back position, maybe push themselves into a first round stage. It seems to be more of an acknowledgement with the running backs versus other positions of just get out into the draft. Jonathan Brooks, just get in the draft. You'll get taken in the second round, get that NFL running back clock started, your contract clock started, so you can get to the next deal, so you can earn as much money as possible, because it's very hard to earn that money. I think that's the one thing you'll also see with that position a little bit. So it does two tandem things. You're going to get a lot of young running backs entering into the league, of course, because of this. And then you're also getting a little bit young running backs that maybe aren't as super refined, have room to grow. You're going to have to do a little bit more imagination on your outlook of them becoming what they will be, because they are a little younger coming out. You have to look a little more at the traits, I guess is what I'm saying on them. But 4 running backs, first 3 rounds. Ouch. I'll tell you something that stood out about this draft that I thought would maybe impact things a little bit more than has been in recent years, that the splits on the field with a lot of the safeties, free safeties, strong safeties, didn't matter which one you looked at. There was a lot of ask and requirement from these guys to do a lot within their defenses. Play free, play strong, play slot, and almost have your snaps equally distributed throughout those 3 portions. Maybe even some linebacker snaps in there too. And these are guys that are going to be ready-made for this Vic Fangio cover 2 shell, new hotness kind of defense that's swept the nation about 7-8 years ago, and I think it's still maybe there right now. But it doesn't seem to be pushing up their value within this draft necessarily. When you looked at through who was picked, and guys like Newbin, who was the first safety taken off the board, he wasn't taken until the 35th selection of the NFL draft. That was your first safety taken. Only a handful of them throughout the course of this draft. Yet these were guys that are set up to play well within this defense. You're not going to have to teach some guy who's been a strong safety his whole time in college how to do free safety stuff. And I would have thought that this would have pushed maybe a little bit of their value. Maybe it would have helped increase them up a little bit. But it does not appear to be the case with it. They all kind of just, were the teams that eventually took where the value was almost, like DDT, where you just, or DTD, where you just couldn't, turn away from him. It's like, this guy's drop's too good. Or Cameron Kitchens and the Rams, where they're just looking at him going, man, this is too much. We can't, I know safety's not a value, but we can't let him go any further than this right here. It's kind of interesting to see where the safety position continues to go as far as the NFL's outlook on it a little bit by what you can take from how they were drafted. Only 6 safeties, by the way. 6 safeties through the first 3 rounds of the draft. Another point here is no one reaches for middle linebacker. Linebackers all went right about where you'd expect them to go. Edrin Cooper, Junior Colson in the 2nd round, everything slotted out, charted out, right to where you thought these guys would be about landing into. So that 4th, 5th round range especially is where you saw the gluttony of inside linebackers kind of go, which was interesting because it was kind of where my chart was graded. But I also thought within the grading of my chart that there would be a little bit more of those guys that would be reached up for maybe a little bit more into the 3rd round area of things, but they weren't. So as we looked at with safety, another position here in linebacker, inside linebacker, one that just by the way that the NFL drafted here, they're telling you a little bit to me that I'm not saying it's a position completely devalued at this point, but just interesting the way they value it here in this modern era versus how it was valued even maybe 10 years ago, which I don't think we would have looked at a draft like that 10 years ago and it would have seen the same kind of numbers. 6 Much like with the safety, only 6 middle linebackers taken through the first 3 rounds. Only 6 inside linebackers. That's a Mike, a Will. Interesting. If you want your 4th round, this NFL draft told you where you want to go out there and get them is going to be into the 4th round. Get your tight end there. Because only 3 tight ends through the first 3 rounds were taken. And then you had 6 tight ends in the 4th round taken, including your Seattle Seahawks taking A.J. Barner. So that's where your value now in the future lands. If you're looking at that being like, where's the new devalued proper spot to take a tight end in an NFL draft? I guess 4th round. That's where everybody jumped. Everybody's like, right here. It was kind of weird on watching this draft. I don't know what to make of that one. Last point here is on this one. Tackle is still king of everything. 17 tackles taken through the first 3 rounds, even outpacing the wide receiver. So make no mistake about it. Wide receiver is, that's what everybody likes. Give me that. Get that guy go deep. Give me that possession guy. Give me that yak guy. Give me that fly sweep guy. Give me that gadget guy. Well, tackle still rolls. Left tackle, right tackle, no matter. 17 tackles, first 3 rounds. Glad we weren't seeing that many tackles taken through the first 3 rounds, as I look at a couple of these guys that were taken and I go, ooh. Cardinals, Isaiah Adams, huh? So a lot of pulling out there for tackles, even more so than wide receivers. Hopefully Abraham Lucas's knee is good for the foreseeable future, and hopefully that 7th round kid that they took can also do well for us, because man, the price is just as costly out there if you want to go tackles.